Hello, screenwriters. Welcome back to Five Questions with a Screenwriter. And the screenwriter we have with us today is Andrea Birding. Andrea, thank you so much for being on Five Questions with the Screenwriter.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Let's get right into it. Question number one. What are three screenplays every new writer should read, in your opinion?
Oh, man. That's a really tough question because I think it depends on what you like to write, Like, I think what a comedy writer should be reading is different than what a horror writer should be reading, So I think my advice would be to find scripts in your genre that you want to write. And like, what I think is helpful for me is, like movies that you're very familiar with and that you like and that and finding those screenplays and reading, even if you can, like, read along while you're watching it, um just to get an idea of like how, okay, this is how it's written, this is how it's translated onto the screen. For me, when I was just getting started, this is so weird because I do consider myself like a comedy dramedy kind of writer, but like one of the screenplays that helped me the most, just to get an idea of like how it worked, was the Children of Men screenplay, which is like,
I love that
I
screenplay.
love
Oh,
it. It's so terrific. It's very different from what I write though. So it feels kind of weird like saying that that's what taught me, and when that it goes in like contrary to the advice that I just gave of finding things in your genre. But I think it does apply to what I was saying about like find a movie you like, find a movie because I like that movie a lot, and reading that screenplay really helped me understand how to write a screenplay. So yeah, I guess my advice is that I can't think of three specific screenplays like that I would recommend for everybody, but I would think for each individual to think of three movies that you really like, that you're really familiar with, and read those screenplays. Is that a cop out?
oh my God, you got me excited talking about Children of Men, but I'll keep it short. So I'm curious, from your opinion, what aspect of the writing for Children of Men, like specifically the screenplay that you love so much?
Mm. I think it taught me a lot about action lines specifically, and because there are like what I would call action sequences in it. It like taught me a lot about writing, like, oh, what does that look like on the page, and I felt that the action lines specifically were very evocative in building the world. Yeah, and I mean the dialogue was great too, but my first answer, my impulse, is that it taught me a lot about effective use of action lines.
It was great because like it like prevented the characters from like being too expositional. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it comes down to what the stereotype of what people always say of show don't tell, that if you're showing this world, you don't need to have your characters say everything that's happening.
Yes, yes. Do you hear that, screenwriters? Read Children of Men ASAP if you haven't read it yet.
And watch the movie. The movie's great.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. I mean, that's how I discovered the screenplay because of the movie.
Exactly.
All right. Question number two: what is something a screenwriter will never learn in a book?
I think that something that can't be taught is the networking aspect. I would say, like, that, people can tell you like, oh yeah, and as a screenwriter you should be networking, but like I feel like you can't teach that skill just from reading. It's something you need to do. And like, I don't know, I think too many people think of networking as like, oh, I'm going to find these big shots and I'm going to sell myself to them. But really, like, networking is just making friends. It's finding your peers, like people at the same level as you, and then working to rise up the ranks together, and then you have these people, these connections, who will say your name in rooms you're not in and get you these opportunities because you've done this networking like groundwork. And it's such a valuable tool. And as much as you read about networking in a book, I think you just need to go out and work on your social skills and making friends. And I know that's so hard for like introverted writers that we just sit alone at home with our laptops. But like, it's, if you think of it, because networking sounds intimidating to me, but just saying like, oh yeah, just go meet just like chat screenwriting with people who are at your same level, and that sounds a lot less scary than networking.
Let me ask you this: so, for an introverted writer, right? What's like a smooth like way to transition into networking, like I guess like in physical spaces? Like, what would you recommend?
So I always think of, because I've been to the Austin Film Festival twice now, which I think is such a great place to meet other writers. I've heard people refer to it as like screenwriter summer camp, basically. And so it's a great networking opportunity just in the sense of meeting other writers. And what I always found to be if the conversation lulled, the best thing to say was always like, so what are you working on right now? And that gets people talking about something they're excited. Hopefully they're excited about it if they're working on it, you know? And then you can kind of riff off of that of like, oh, that sounds like blah, 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 this other thing that I like, or, what's the research you have to do for something like that, you know? So when you hear about the other person's project, it can start to bounce off the conversation again. So that's what I always found was a good question when there was a lull in the conversation.
I totally agree. Like, film festivals is one of the best places to network. As
Mm-hmm.
a screenwriter, especially if networking is not one of your skills, because like it'll come naturally if you're at a film festival, because everyone is
Mm-hmm.
there is basically is doing the same thing as you're doing. So speaking of, you know
Exactly.
what,
Yeah.
actually, um, so okay, for my viewers who's watching this, right? So I usually do like a pre-interview before I do the interview, and like so I was gonna ask you about the Austin Film Festival. Since you brought it up, let me bring it up in the real interview. So you won the pitch competition there, right? So
I
like
did.
so
Yeah.
that's amazing. So like, I mean, like, I'm sure pitching itself is an art unto itself, right? So I mean, how did you what what made you like I guess like a good pitch person?
So that was interesting because the pitch competition at Austin, you have 60 seconds to pitch. You have 1 minute, which is not how real life pitching works in a room with an executive. you know? So it's a different skill set, I think, than like actual, I'm going to use air quotes, like real life pitching. Like I think it's a different skill, but the pitch that won 2 years ago was my pitch of my dramedy feature Breast and Show, which is loosely based on my own experience as a young breast cancer survivor. So I really think that what drove my pitch home was my personal connection, just leading with like, this is a little fraction of my story. This is how it inspired the story I wrote. And I think people really connected with just my connection to the story, and just this is this is what happens, but more importantly, this is why I wrote it. So I think that was the key to the success of that pitch.
That's awesome. And then do you feel that winning that pitch competition gave you a lot of like confidence for when you in an actual room with an executive?
Yeah, I think it reassured me that maybe I'm not bad at this. You know what I mean? Like I'm definitely a self-deprecating person. And so just to get that affirmation of like, hey, like maybe you're actually okay at this, it definitely inspires confidence for future conversations.
That's awesome. All right. Question number 3. What is the greatest character arc you've seen in the story?
The greatest character arc I've seen in a story. Oh my gosh. I That's a really hard question. What comes to mind first? So I have a podcast, right, where my co-host and I are watching and discussing every movie that has won a writing award from the WGA, starting with the first awards in 1948. Right now we're in 1961, so we've done like 40 something episodes. And so most of the movies I've been watching recently are older films, a lot of which I hadn't seen before. And so like those are the movies that come to mind first. That's what I've watched most recently. And so I don't know if I would say of all time, but the strongest character arc that comes to mind just right now off the cuff is Maria in West Side Story, which I just watched. We just recorded the episode yesterday. And so that's like fresh top of my head, but just her arc from, because it's based on Romeo and Juliet. She's the Juliet character. So just her starting as this like very young, very innocent, like fresh faced teenage girl who's got her whole world ahead of her, um, experiencing all of this love and this tragedy and this death over the course of this film, and just how jaded she becomes by the end of the movie, and just how she says it at the end of the movie, like, now I can kill because I hate to, like, I have hate in my heart now. And I wept at the at her like final monologue, because like it just was so tragic. It was just such a tragic arc to see her, like, I'm like getting teary just thinking about it. Yeah, so that it was a tragic arc, it was a sad arc, but it was an interesting and well done and well written arc. So that's what comes to mind first.
So I take it, based off your description of the podcast, did it win like a best?
It won best written musical, because that was when they still did, this is like back when the categories were still like comedy, drama, and music and musical. So it was best written musical for the 1962 awards. So yeah.
Look at that, a little bit of history over here. And then we'll make sure we link the podcast show description and link
Oh
below.
yeah, I should say it's called The Writer's Cut. I should have said that. That's what it's called.
No problem. I'll make sure to put it in the description for everyone to
Awesome. Thank
go
you.
and listen to. All right. Question number 4. What was the first screenplay you wrote, and what was that writing process like?
Ooh, I still feel a lot of love for my first screenplay I ever wrote. It is called Neurotransmission, and it is a sci-fi pilot, like a 1 hour pilot, for what I, in my dreams, would become like a series, like a limited series. I always imagined it as just like a one season arc. It is about a young woman with bipolar disorder who discovers that her supernatural abilities are not delusions, that they're like real, that she's like really experiencing these like supernatural abilities. And she needs to team up with her psychiatrist to find enough stability to control her powers and take down this otherworldly threat that's threatening the city. So kind of like, I've been calling it like Legion meets Silver Linings Playbook, which I think is a fun combination, because I really, where it stemmed from was wanting better mental health representation in media. I have bipolar disorder myself, and just I get so frustrated with like the way that psychiatric medication specifically is like demonized, kind of. And because so often the narrative is like, oh, these pills, they make me lose my artistic self and I'm not really me. And like, I don't know, I wanted a story where the main character needs the pills to excel. So that was but the what the writing process was like was kind of throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. I started in, I think, Celtex, I think, was my first software that I used just to get an idea of like the format. And I had read Save the Cat was like my intro to to learning about screenwriting, and that's for features more so, but I was able to apply some of it to this pilot. And yeah, it was a mess. My first draft was a mess. And I like going back to read it now is like, it's embarrassing, but it's also like so cool to see how far I've grown in the last like 5 years of since I picked up screenwriting. And I'm hoping that neurotransmission can have another life as a feature. I'm trying to like outline it as a feature. Yeah, so that was my first and like my like ugly terrible baby. I love her.
Nice, as you should, you know. Um, all right, and we are here at the final question. All right, so um, you get to plan and go on a non-romantic date slash hang out with your current main character. What does that date look like?
Ooh, so like current main character, like my work in progress right now.
Yeah,
Okay, so she is 26 years old, so a little bit younger than me, and is going through some really tragic circumstance. She just was diagnosed with a non-cancerous brain tumor. Uh, so that it would be an interesting date because she's kind of going through it. Um, yeah, I think we would probably because I am a breast cancer survivor, so I think we would have a lot of conversation just about like how it feels to have your body fail you at a young age, and like I think there would be a lot of opportunity for like deep existential conversation about like what our bodies do and how that affects like who you are. And I don't think we would have a good time. I don't think it would be fun. But I think it would be I think yeah. But I think it would be healing. I think it would be healing for both of us to have this conversation.
you know what? A healing conversational date. There's
Yeah,
nothing,
yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. You know. This has been 5 questions with screenwriter Andrea Birding. Andrea, thank you so much. I do want to ask you: are you currently watching, or have you watched any TV or film recently that you would recommend to our viewers?
Ooh, I have right now really been loving The Studio with Seth Rogen. It's so funny and I think is really like it's obviously very heightened, very satirical take on the movie industry, but I do think it's good for screenwriters to watch, not only because of the excellent writing, but because of the insights, because even heightened, even satirical, it gives insights into the way that the movie studio process works and goes in a way that, if you're just a writer sitting at home alone with your laptop and dreaming of getting picked up by a studio, like you might not know the inner workings of it. So I think it's an interesting TV show for writers to watch for both of those reasons, both the excellent writing and just the subject matter.
You're like the second person I've interviewed recently that mentioned the studio.
Oh,
So
really? That's awesome.
yeah, so yeah, I have to put that on my list. All right. Is there anything else that you want to share with our viewers?
No, I mean, this is probably normally where I would plug my podcast, The Writer's Cut, but we already talked about that. So, but yeah, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on pretty much anywhere you can get podcasts. And if you want to follow me, I am on Instagram, I am on Twitter, I refuse to call it X, I am on Blue Sky, all under my name, Andrea Birding. Um, yeah, that's where you can find me if you want to give me a follow.
Brainstorm, break it down, make a dream, create a scene with Stratword. Stratword. Stratword.